can join. So, hello everyone. My name is Anubhavi Rastogi, and I have been associated with PIO for approximately 1.6 years, and I am delighted to welcome you all to this session on the coding standards and the best programming practices. So, our today's agenda is to first discuss about an essential aspect of programming that often gets overlooked, which is coding standards, and why we should follow these guidelines. And then we will talk about the naming conventions, then defining data. Then we'll also talk about the comments and good documentation. Then we will also learn the good programming practice as well. Then we'll also discuss on the modular programming, that what's the approach for the modular programming, and then we'll be having Q&A. Anyone who have questions that can ask when our presentation ends. So, first is, what are the coding standards? They are nothing, just a set of the guidelines for writing the code. So, uh, writing the code is not merely a task, but it's an expression of the skills, of your professionalism, and your commitment to the quality. So each line of code you write actually represents you, just not to your team members, but to the clients and the stakeholders as well. While I may be here as your lead to guide and support you, but it will be your code that will ultimately speak for you. It's not just about the functionality, but it's about how you represent your capabilities through the work you are actually doing. So, whenever we are writing a code, even if it's just for a testing purpose or for a temporary purpose, remember that it should always adhere to the established standards. This approach will not only enhance the readability of your code, but also demonstrates a professionalism that can set you apart. So, coding standards basically ensures that your work is consistent, clear, and maintainable, making it easier for others to collaborate with you. They allow your code to be understood, and it can be modified by anyone, whether if it's a colleague or even your future self months later. As we are going to delve into this topic today, I want you to think about each one of you, how you can represent your skills through the way you write your code. Together, we can ensure that our code not only meets the functional requirement, but it also stands as a testament to our professionalism and dedication. During this presentation, we'll explore several key aspects of the coding standards, including naming conventions, the importance of the comments, and the modular programming as well. Just give me a second. Sorry for that. Yeah. So now we'll explore the principles of the coding standards and how they can elevate our programming practices in the RPGLE. So first, we will be discussing the importance of the naming conventions in RPGLE and how they can significantly improve the clarity and the maintainability of the code. First is that we should not use the variable's name shorter than the 6 characters. So first and foremost thing, that clarity is the key. We want our code to be easily understood by anyone who works with it. This means using the names greater than the 6 characters are easily understood by anyone whosoever working with it. So this means using the descriptive names that convey the purpose of each variable or field. For instance, if we are using the variable names such as var1, var2, temp, or tmp, it's not understood that what's the purpose of using these variables, what they are actually representing. So we can keep the uh, names between 10 to 14 characters. So we should be mindful of the length of our names. So keeping it between 10 to 14 characters, it enhances the readability and it complies with our language limitation as well. So this will help prevent the names from becoming unwieldy and the confusing. So whenever we are describing any item, here item can be anything, a variable name, a field name, a file name, a data structure name, array name. So whatever it is, make sure that the name is the fully and accurately describing the item. Also, when we are naming an item, it should start with the alphabetic character, that it should not start with any numeric digits or any other character. Then we should avoid the special characters. So avoiding the special characters in our names is crucial because it will ensure the compatibility across the different systems and it will prevent the confusion that can arise from the unusual characters. Then we can go for the camel casing as well when we are naming an item. That means, like for example, if we are declaring any variable such as employee ID. So we can keep the word employee, its initial as small. Then the second word, which is ID, we can keep its initial as capital. Then if we are if we should adhere to the standards, like whether it is set by our company or the client, because it can differ based upon the company policies and the clients, and according to their need we should adhere to the naming conventions. Then using prefixes, So we can help to clarify the type of the variable we are using in our programs. So when we are using the parameters, we can keep the prefix p underscore so that we can differentiate whether it's a parameter or a variable being used in the program. Such as here, we can see that this employee ID customer name we will be using as a parameter. So we have used a prefix p underscore. When we are using the work fields or the work variables, work fields and variables are nothing. They are just the local variables which are being used in our program. So we can keep a prefix w underscore, such as here we can see that order ID customer department, we have added a prefix w underscore. Then for the subfile and the naming a display file, do not worry about these topics because they will be covered in our upcoming session. So for the subfile record format, we use SFL as a suffix. For example, EMP SFL, BYR SFL. So here we have added SFL as a suffix. And here EMP basically just represents the employee and BYR here representing the buyer. So it is a subfile record format. And for the subfile fields, we can use S1 and S2 or so on, depending upon the screen numbers, we can use as a suffix. So for example, for the screen 1, we have roll number. So we can add a prefix S1. And for the second screen, we have this department HOD and we can use it as S2 and so on. Then for the subfile control record format, we can use CTL as a suffix. Here CTL, like AMP CTL and buyer CTL. And for their field names, we can use C1 and C2 and so on as a prefix for defining their fields. Then for naming the display file, we can use D1 and D2 and so on as a suffix when we are giving the name to the display files, like EMP D1, EMP D2, cust D1. And for defining their fields, we can use D1, D2, and so on as a prefix to define their field names. Next is, now we are going to delve into the essential practices of defining data in our RPGLE. First is, it's crucial that we will be declaring all the variables and the parameter list in the specification section, which is DSpec. This will promote the clarity and the organization in our code. Next up, that defining the clear data types in RPGLE is essential because it helps ensure type safety and it will improve the code clarity. When the variables are explicitly defined with the specific data types, it minimizes the risk of the type related errors and makes our code easier to understand. So this clarity will help the developers quickly ascertain what kind of data a variable is expected to hold, which will facilitate better collaboration and it will also reduce the debugging time. Third one is initializing the variables. So initialization of the variables is equally important because if variables are not initialized, they may hold garbage values. Because they may hold the garbage values so that random data can lead to the unpredictable behavior and the bugs in the program. So these garbage value can cause incorrect calculations, unexpected results, or even it can crash the system as well, which can significantly impact the reliability of our application. So in RPGLE, we often initialize the variables using the INZ keyword. So this keyword allows us to set a variable to a specific initial value or simply indicate that it should start from a default state. Sometimes we may use the INZ keyword without assigning an explicit value, meaning that that variable is initialized to its default value based upon its data type. For example, if we have a numeric type variable being declared in the program, so by default it is going to take the 0, and for the character type it is going to take blanks for the character data type. So this practice will ensure that the variable has a defined state right from the starting, which will help us to avoid the issues which are related to the garbage values. Next is that in RPGLE, it is recommended to prefer the named constants over the literal values. It's basically for the clarity and the maintainability. So the exception is there for using 0 and 1, which arises because these values would often have universally understood meanings, that 0 typically indicates false or no, while 1 signifies true or yes. So, this common understanding can enhance the code readability without the need for the additional context. For example, uh, if we are using the SQL statements in our program, so we make use of SQL code or SQL state that if it is 4 times 0, if SQL code is equals to 0, that means our SQL query has been executed successfully. So instead of using 4 times 0, we can either define a constant like SQL success code for clarity in our SQL operations. Like also for when we have reached end of the file, so we can again declare a constant variable indicating that reached end of the file. So instead of using these literal values, we can simply define the named constant, which is actually more readable and it is also very maintainable. Then comes up the indentation. It's essential, not just for the data structure and their subfields or the procedures, but it is also essential for the loops or the conditional statements as well. So consistent indentation enhances the readability of the code, clearly displaying the logical flow and hierarchy of the program. So it helps the developers quickly identify the block of the code and making it easier to understand the relationship between the different sections of the code. So, by applying the proper indentation throughout all the elements of our program, including loops, conditional statements, data structure, we promote the better organization and the maintainability, which will ultimately leads to the less errors and a smoother development process. Next is that we should avoid the compile time arrays. It's important because it can limit the flexibility and will make our code less maintainable. So when arrays are defined at the compile time, their size and structures are their structure is fixed, which can lead to the inefficiency if the data requirement changes. So this inefficiency can result in the wasted memory or the need of the extensive uh, code modification. So instead of using compile time arrays, we can go with the runtime arrays, which will allow for the dynamic sizing and easier management of the data, thus making the program more adaptable to the changing requirements. And ultimately, it will reduce the errors which are associated with our static data structures or the compile time arrays. Next is we can make use of the data structures that leveraging data structures effectively in our program. It will help to organize related data elements and which will enhance the code efficiency and the clarity. Next is that we should avoid the multi-occurrence data structure. Instead, we should use the array data structure. So first, I would like to like discuss that what is the multi-occurrence data structure. It is a type of the data structure that allows the multiple instances of a particular data item to be defined within a single structure. This means that a field can contain several occurrences of the data, typically organized in a sequential manner. These things are going to be covered in the upcoming session. Here I'm just giving you the overview that what standards we are supposed to follow when we are going to learn about these topics, and we should follow or implement these standards. So, uh, avoiding the multi occurrence data structure in RPGLE is advisable because they can introduce unnecessary complexity, making it difficult to manage and access data consistently. So, this complexity can lead to the increased chances of errors, as developer may struggle to keep track of the relationships and states of various occurrences. Instead, we should use array data structure, which basically provides a more straightforward approach, which allows for the easier manipulation of the data through our indexed access. Then, optimized memory usage. So, using appropriate data types to optimize memory usage, and it will enhance our performance. Also, we should be very mindful of the variable scope and lifetime to manage the resource usage effectively. So, by following these principles, we can ensure that our RPGLE applications are robust and easy to maintain. So, next is importance of using comments in our RPGLE code. So, what is a comment? So, comments are the non executable part of the code that is going to provide the explanation, annotations, or the clarifications for the sake of the developer or the maintainers. So, these are ignored by our compiler, and it will serve to enhance the readability and understanding of the code, which makes it easier for others to comprehend the purpose and the functionality of the specific sections, either it be a logic or it is a algorithm. So, comments are basically optional, but they are essential for creating the maintainable and the understandable code. So now let's just explore the key reasons for incorporating the comments effectively. So first is, comment provides the brief description of the program or the procedure. So by outlining its purpose and its functionality right at the beginning, we can help the future developers quickly grasp what the code is intended to do, saving the time during code reviews or the debugging session as well. So, next up is that every program or the routine should start with the title comment. That this clear identification will serve as a roadmap for anyone who is reading the code, which will allow them to understand its function without delving into the details immediately. Moreover, comments are invaluable for explaining the complex technologies and complex techniques and the logic. So there are often sections of code that may not be immediately clear, and comments can shed light on these areas, enhancing overall comprehensions. And we should maintain a modification log within our comments, that this log basically documents all the changes which are made to the code, including the date and the description of what was actually altered. So this will provide the context for why changes were made, and which is also crucial for the future maintenance as well. So I'll give you some example. So here in this program, I have created this modification log. Here, this is just a sample program. That's why no modification has been done so far. And this program doesn't contain any procedure. That's why here I've just mentioned that no procedure. And then here we provide the basic details that who has created this program, its creation date, and its description. Then like we can mention these comments as well. Like here it's just the file declaration, it's the variable declaration, it's the now here the main logic has been started. It's when we are doing this chain here, so that means this record not found, so we have added the comments. Also, one more way to define the comments, like here this section from I guess 80, from 80 position, yes, from this 84. So here our comments can be written. So this will just simplify that the what does this line actually represents. So also it's very essential that we should avoid the cluttered comments that will merely echo the code itself. Instead, comments should add the meaningful context, enriching that the understanding of the code without any redundancy. Also, white space is another tool that we can use effectively. So by incorporating the white space around the comment lines, it is going to enhance the readability, making the comments stand out and easier to process. So here this, like we have made our comments in the white color, so it will easily help us to differentiate that this is the comment. We should avoid the colors like red, pink. These are not some suitable colors for defining the comments in our program. And then we should use the consistent marker lines, such as the double slash for the single line comments and for the multi-line comments as well, which will help us to maintain the uniformity and also going to improve the code readability. So, to enhance the navigation within the code, we can employ the section dividers using the lines of dashes or the similar markers. This will going to break up the major sections such as declaration, main procedures, sub procedures, which will make it easier to locate specific parts of the code. So, for example, here I have not created such banner, but here we have just simply declared, defined the comments. But in other example, I do have, so we have, these are some marker lines I have used and created the banners for specifying that these are the control specification, this is the file specification. So we can do that to clearly indicate the different block of to different like different elements being used in our program. So this is used for the variable declaration. Here I have used the SQL statements. Then here a copybook has been used. So this way we can simply differentiate between the different sections being used in our program. Now we are going to discuss the use case of the free format. So using free format RPG is not just a syntax improvement, but it's an essential tool for enhancing the modular programming in RPGLE as well. So uh, now, let's just dive into how free format plays a pivotal role in uh, the modular programming and the specific benefits it brings. So, first, it eliminates the need for the fixed column positions, which makes our code more readable and easier to write. So, one of our biggest challenges with the fixed format RPG is the strict alignment of the code in the specific columns. So with the free format, there is no need to adhere to these fixed positions. This means that our code is much more flexible in terms of formatting. Developers can place the code in any logical order without worrying about whether it's in the correct column or not. This is going to improve the readability of the code, which is easier to follow and understand it in a glance. Next is more readable and the maintainable codes. So format obviously will promote the more cleaner, more modular code as the layout and the visual organization are more flexible. So this makes it easier to document, debug and maintain. Next is easier to write the new code. When we are writing the new code, so free format offers the greater flexibility. It allows you to structure the code more naturally without adhering to the rigid columns of the fixed format. So, this makes writing our new logic cleaner and more intuitive, which ultimately leads to the faster development cycles. Then next is the like when we are changing the existing code, so we can make use of the free format to replace the entire subroutine or replace the large section of the code. So if we need to replace the entire subroutine, or we have to refactor a large section of code, so free format is significantly more efficient, because in free format we can modify or replace the code sections of code without being constrained by the column alignment, which again makes it easier to restructure the larger block of code. Next is the easier indentation and the grouping. So indentation is much more easier and much more intuitive in the free format. In fixed format, aligning the blocks of code, especially the loops and the conditional statements, can be cumbersome due to the column constraints, and it is not much readable. And the indentation is also cannot be followed in the free fixed format as much as we do in the free format. So and free format allows us to indent the loops and the group related statements in a way that it is visually clear and the logical, which was actually more challenging in the fixed format. And when also like we can use the blank lines to visually group the related source lines, making them more distinct. So by inserting blank lines, we can separate out the related sections of the code. So clear visual breaks will help the programmer quickly identify the block of code. So it's important to use the completely blank lines for separation rather than relying on the blank comment lines. Thus, which can actually clutter the code if we use the blank comment lines. Moreover, we should also avoid the multiple consecutive blank lines, as they can make our code appear disorganized and harder to navigate. In essence, the careful use of the blank lines will enhance the clarity and also helps in maintaining a clean and maintainable code structure, which will make it easier for anyone to read and understand the program later on. So, for example, let's just see here that we have indented it. So here it is easier to identify that these are the subfields of these data structure. If we are writing a block of code for the procedure as well, so I have indented it by giving the two spaces here, so that this block of code is easily understand that this is a procedure for the order buyer SFL clear. Also, we have kept a one blank line, but we should not use consecutive blank lines. It will ultimately lead to the lengthy program, and which is also not a good practice. And we should use a completely blank line instead of a blank comment line. Next is simplified long expressions. So handling the long expressions is much more straightforward in the free format. In the fixed format, aligning multiple terms or the expressions within a single line can lead to the readability issues, or it will require line continuation characters. So by breaking up the calculations into smaller parts at the logical points such as operator, here I have just written one example. Here the operator is the plus, so developers can quickly grasp the logic behind them. So both ways of writing the expression, like here I'm calculating the volume, in this second one also I'm calculating the volume. So both are both ways of writing the expression for calculating the volume will give the same result, but the second way is much more readable. By aligning the expression across the multiple lines, it becomes easier to understand each part of the calculation very easily. So, this clear structure helps prevent errors and makes the code more accessible for others to read and the maintain. Then, next is improves collaboration and flexibility. So, free format facilitates better collaboration among developers, since the syntax is more in line with our modern programming practices. So, developers who are familiar with the languages like Java, Python, or any other programming language will find it easier to work in RPGLE. So, next is indicator. So in RPG 3 or RPG 4, indicators were commonly used to control the program logic and flow. So, however, with the introduction of the built-in functions in modern RPG, it's best to avoid the indicators due to the several disadvantages. So, using indicators can lead to the code that is harder to read and maintain, as they can often obscure the logic by requiring developers to remember what each indicator actually represents. So, this will increase the chance of the errors and misunderstandings, especially in the larger programs. So, especially relying on indicators can make it difficult to follow the program's flow, as their effects are not always immediate clear. So, in contrast, we can make use of the built-in functions, which provides a more clearer, more explicit way to handle the logic and the calculations. So it enhances the code readability and the maintainability by clearly showing the intent of the code, which will reduce the need for the complex indicator management. So overall, using built-in functions is a far better practice in modern RPGLE programming, which makes the code cleaner and easier to work with. So I have prepared one example for the same. This one is the example. So here I have used the indicator 99. Uh, Basically, I have this file declared, file1 declared. Then this W key has been evaluated with value 9, and I'm chaining this key field into this file1. And if the record is found, that means when record is found, then this indicator will be off, which will represent that the record has been found. If that indicator is on, that means the record has not been found. So sometimes it's very confusing that when the because in general when we say something is on, something is true, that means that operation is successfully executed. So but here it's just opposite. When this indicator will be off, that means at that time the record has been found. And when we use end of file, okay, so in that case when we make use of indicators, so in that case when the indicator is on, that means we have reached end of the file, and when the indicator is off, that means there are still more records to process. That's why it's very confusing to use indicators, and it's also not possible to remember what actually the indicator is representing. Here it's just one indicator, that's why it's not a big problem. But if there is a program that is using several indicators, so it might be confusing that which indicator number is actually representing. So here I have simply used the built-in function percentage found. It's very simple and very understood that when like here we are again chaining this key field into this file, and if it is found, then we are simply displaying that record is found. If not, then record not found. So it is much more understandable and also clearer. That's why we prefer the usage of the opcodes and the built-in functions over indicators. But when we are using subfiles and the display files, so indicators are essential for handling the user inputs and the program flow. So while built-in functions are preferred in many cases, but indicators are necessary in a specific context, such as display files. So one significant advantage is the ability to rename these indicators for clarity. But we can rename these indicators. For example, the default indicator IN03 is basically used for the exit functionality. So we can rename this indicator to something meaningful, which is very readable and also maintainable. Like for example, IN05 for the refresh functionality, IN12 for the cancel functionality. So by renaming these indicators to something more descriptive, such as exit button, refresh, cancel, so developers can make the code more intuitive and easier to understand. So we'll show you one example. So we can rename these indicators using indicator data structure, and so here I have used this program status data structure. So like this 03 is for the, this indicator is for the exit functionality. So I have renamed it to exit, so which is more descriptive. Then 04 for the prompt, 05 for the refresh, then 12 for the cancel. Other indicators are also used for some other functionality. So and in subfile and display file, we can also assign the indicators for the reverse image or the position cursor when some error has been found or when something needs to be highlighted. So we can if this is a role field in my display file, so I have given this indicator 40 for the reverse image and the position cursor. So I have used a RIPC suffix here so that it can be easily understood that this indicator is for the reverse image and the position cursor. We have this non-display as well. So I have used ND as a suffix to differentiate between the indicators, that this is a reverse image and position cursor indicator. This is an indicator for the non-display. So we can easily like identify it. Next is that qualifying the file name when we are using the built-in functions is very important, because it enhances the code clarity and the readability. So by specifying the file, it becomes immediately clear that which data source is being referenced here, reduces the ambiguity, especially in the programs that may deal with the multiple files. Now, structured programming techniques. So first point is that do not use these go to, cap, xx, com, z add, z sub opcodes. So why we should not use these opcodes? Because these are considered outdated as they do not align with the principle of the structured programming, which prioritize the clarity, maintainability, and the reliability. So, modern programming practices and the language provides more robust, clear constructs that help prevent errors and improves the code quality. So, embracing the structured programming techniques, which will lead to the better software development practices, making our code easier to understand, maintain, and modify. So first is go to, like the reason why we should not use it, because it creates the unstructured control flow, which leads to the spaghetti code. Spaghetti code is nothing, just a complex and the tangled code structure that lacks the clear organization and the flow. So it can make the logic of a program uh, difficult to follow, because it jumps between different points in the code without a clear structure. So we can use the alternative, such as loops or the conditional statements, to create the clear and the predictable control flow. Next is the comp opcode. Is often this opcode is often used for comparing data, but it can lead to the type related errors and make the code less readable. It can also complicate data handling and increase the likelihood of the logical errors if data types are not properly managed. Instead, we can simply use the built-in functions or the clearer comparison operators, such as equals to, greater than, less than, which will improve the readability and the maintainability. Next is this z add or z sub. These opcode is used to add 0 to a variable or subtract 0 to a variable, which effectively initializes or resetting it. So while it serves a purpose, its use is often considered outdated because it can obscure the intent of the code. It does not clearly convey what the programmer here intends to achieve. Instead, we can simply use the assignment operator for resetting or initializing the variable, or we can simply uh, like use the plus or minus operators as well. Then the cap xx operator, opcode, which is used for the conditional branching based on the specific condition. Its usage can lead to the unstructured control flow, making the code harder to follow and maintain. So instead of using cap XX, we can make use of the conditional statements or the select constructs, which will create the clearer path throughout our code and make the logic more transparent. Next is we should not use these obsolete. So using XX with if opcode, do while, do until, when opcode. So these the use of these opcodes is generally discouraged in the modern programming due to the several key reasons. Firstly, uh, these constructs can often lead to the less readable code, creating the complex and the unstructured control flow that results in the unclear uh, code flow. So, when these opcodes are used, they can introduce numerous bugs if it is not handled clearly, as their ambiguous nature can lead to the unintended behavior. Secondly, modern programming practices enhances the clarity and the maintainability. So clearer alternatives, such as the structured if statements or well-defined loop constructs like do, for, while, it allows the developers to express their intentions more explicitly, because we can simply define our looping expression in the factor 2. So instead of using these xx, we can simply define our expressions into the factor 2. Next is that why we prefer the select statement over the nested if. So, select often offers a more organized way to evaluate the multiple conditions. It handles the complex checks without cluttering the code, unlike multiple if statements. So, uh, using so also from a performance standpoint, select can be more efficient. It can evaluate conditions in a single pass, while in nested if it checks the condition sequentially, which can be slower with so many checks. So, the fourth point is that we should use the always qualify the end opcodes. So, using qualify end opcodes such as endif for if blocks, endu for the do loops, and for the for loop, it serves the crucial purposes beyond just the readability and the maintainability, because these qualifiers explicitly represent the boundaries of each control structure, which clearly indicates which block of code is associated with which statement. So, for example, end if signifies the end of an if block, ensuring that the programmer understands the logical grouping of the conditions. Additionally, employing qualifiers like NSL as well for the select statement, it clarifies the scope of the conditional branches. So this approach help prevent errors during the modifications and the debugging as well, as it's easier to track the flow of the logic. Next is avoid programming tricks. Uh, so not every developer has the same level of expertise. Even skilled developers might struggle to understand the complex and the unconventional coding techniques. So this can lead to the mistakes that may cause significant issues in a project. If suppose there have been cases where confusion over unclear code has resulted into the critical failures. So, therefore, when we use any advanced programming tricks or optimizations, it's crucial to add the comments that explain what you are actually doing. So, a simple one line comment is enough to provide the clarity and the context, which will help others to understand the logic behind your code. So, clear documentation through the comments ensures that everyone can follow your thought process and making it the code base easier to maintain and improve over time. Next is strings. So, declaring the constants for strings in RPG is it's important to declare string as constants rather than storing them in arrays or table, because using constants allows us to assign a meaningful names to your string, which makes the code easier to read and to understand. For example, if we are displaying any error message, so give it a name like error file not found. So instead of putting it at the bottom of your code, this way anyone reading your code can quickly see the purpose of the string used in the program. So declaring that means declaring the constants at the beginning of your program also improves the organization and the maintainability, as all important values are located at the one place. So this will avoid the any confusion and makes it simpler to update or change any message in the future. Also, second is whenever possible, we should utilize the variable length fields to simplify the string management. By that, what I mean that it's advisable to use varchar instead of the fixed length characters like 30, 50, 60 characters. So this varchar, what it will do, it will automatically trims any unnecessary white space, which saves you from having to use the built-in functions like trim or trim built-in function multiple times in your program. So these functions can consume the significant system resources, and it can also slow down your program performance. So by using varchar, you are not only enhancing the efficiency of your code, but it will also simplify it. So this means that your data is stored in a clean, trimmed format right from the starting, reducing the likelihood of the errors, making your code more efficient overall. Next is modular programming. So, modular programming in RPGLE was created to fix the problems that was found in the original programming model, which is OPM. So, in OPM, whole program logic is written inside a single source file. Thus, in OPM, the program size increases gradually, and also and also it get confusing that, and we cannot reuse the code if you call that program in other program as well. So it will process all the lines of codes which may not be needed, and even if you add subroutine, then again it is going to add a logic which makes our program complex and long. So to reduce this effort, use of ILE is introduced. So with this modular programming, developers can break down a large program into smaller, more manageable pieces, that is called as module. So each module will focus on a specific task, which makes our code easier to understand and work with. So for example, if imagine we have an RPGLE program that handles the customer orders. So instead of writing one long program to process the orders, check inventory, and generate invoices, you could create separate modules for each of these tasks. So, like one module could handle the order processing, other module could check the inventory levels, third would generate the invoices. So, this way, if you need to change how invoices are created, you can just update that specific module without affecting the others. So this modular approach will also allow multiple team members to work upon different modules at the same time, which will improve the collaboration and the efficiency. So overall, modular programming leads to the more cleaner, more organized code that is easier to maintain and update over time. So we create module. Inside the module, we do have procedures. We can bind the modules to a service program. Then that service program can be binded to a binding directory, and we can bind the binding directory to our main calling program. So uh, now is the service program. So service program also plays a vital role. So service program also plays a vital role in this process because they allow the multiple programs to access the same procedures without having the duplicate data. For example, if you have a set of common business procedures, you can place them inside a service program. This way, any program that needs to use that logic can simply call the like bind that service program to that module, or sorry, to that program, and then making our development faster and will reduce the error. Then comes up the binding directory. So it further enhances this modular approach by organizing the service program and making it easier to manage the dependencies. So a binding directory acts as a roadmap for your programs, telling that which program and procedures are available for use. So when a procedure is declared with an export in a service program, it can easily be accessed by any program that includes the binding directory, which facilitates the smoother integration. Uh, these topics are also going to be covered in our upcoming sessions, so do not worry about this. And let's just check few examples and few coding standards. We have already seen this header. So here we can see, like, I have declared, so here these are some work variables being used in my module. So here I have used the prefix w underscore, and also here you have noticed that I have used this like keyword. So declaring the variables with the like keyword in RPGLE is advantageous because it allows you to create a new variable based on the attributes of the existing field or the variable. So this means that the original field definition changes, such as its data type or length. So this new variable will automatically inherits those changes. So this will reduce the risk of the inconsistencies and the errors. Also, it simplifies our code and promotes the better organization. So we do not need to like change it every time. So suppose if I have used this seller ID in so many modules, okay, and I have changed its value or something, its type I have changed. So wherever I have used this in my program or in some other module, so I have to uh, change at every place. So instead we can simply use the like keyword. Then for the parameters, I have used a p underscore uh, prefix to differentiate that this is a parameter being used for this procedure. So while we are declaring any procedure, so we can create a banner such as I have created in my program by giving the procedure name and its purpose, and also in my header as well. So here in the procedure name, I have mentioned all the procedures that being used in this module, and you can provide its description as well. Also, one more thing related to the SQL statements, that if we are writing any SQL statement, so we can format it very precisely, so it is more readable. So instead of just writing it randomly, the field names, the host variables, so we can format it neatly, so it is more readable and understandable. Apart from that, so for the constants, like we should use the constants instead of using these literal values. So in my module, we have used the SQL statement. So we were checking that our SQL statement has been successfully executed or not by checking the SQL state is equals to the 5 times 0. So we have declared a constant variable and gave a very meaningful name, that's SQL query executed. And for the sub file, like when we have reached the, we have the maximum number of like we have limit of the records. So this tetra 9 is the limit. So we have given a meaningful name to this, that max records, we have reached the maximum number of records, and then leave. Also, we can include a copybook where we can keep all our prototypes, our the global variables which are being used across multiple procedures or modules. So, in wrapping up, and I want to emphasize that coding standards are not just one size fits all. By that, I actually mean that it can differ greatly based on the individual. So, by that, I actually mean that it can differ greatly based on the individual preferences, company policies, and the client needs. So, what one developer finds beneficial, another might see as unnecessary. So, by adhering to these guidelines, we foster a shared understanding among team members, streamline our development processes, and ensure that our work is consistent. So it's important to remember that these standards serve as a framework, guiding us in creating the code that meets our collective expectation. So as we continue to evolve as developers, let's just stay open to the different perspective while respecting the standards that help us work effectively together. So thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. Now, I look forward to any questions that you may have.
Hi everyone. So if anyone have questions, so you can put in the chat Q&A box so that Anubhavi can answer your questions.
Okay, so how we can change the color for the comment in the coding line? Okay, so what we can do, we have to make some settings. In the edit, you can go in the preferences, then in the keyboard. So this one, QSNSA White, I'll share this in the chat box. So here you can give a key. So whatever key you are going to press, it will turn the line to the white. So here this is for like white reverse image. This is for underline. This is for yellow color. So you can you can give a key, and then you can click on OK, and whenever you are going to press all W, then it will turn the line into white.
Any more questions? Okay. Someone asking about the related to the submitting assignment. Okay, we can ping you in the group about that issue, so we can contact you in group. Anyone have questions? So you can put in chat box.
I guess we do not have any more questions. So thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you everyone.